The recently enacted legislation, Senate Bill D4, or SB D4 as it's called, passed in May of 2022 in response to the collapse of the Champlain Towers in Surfside back in June of 2021, has sent many tongues a wagging, some fingers a pointing, a little bit timbers a flaring, and not a small amount of Chicken Little in the condo marketplace. So what is Senate Bill D4? What does it mean? Is it a good thing or a bad thing for potential condo owners? Stick around and get the 411 because a lot of things that came out of this, and some folks think they didn't know everything, and most folks feel like they don't know a whole lot. So stick around and you'll get our take on it. So let's go ahead and get to it. So really, what is Senate Bill D4 or SB D4, okay? And while there are many aspects of it, we're gonna focus on the three main components as it relates to inspections for condominiums and the impact on its reserves. So basically, what it comes down to is that SB D4 is calling for mandatory inspections to start on condominiums at 3 stories or taller, okay? And they're gonna start basically when they're 30 years old. If they're within 3 miles of the coastline, they're going to start when they're 25, okay? And they're also going to start if there's a certificate of occupancy that was issued before 1992, again, following up with the ones that are 3 years old. So there are a number of bits and pieces to look at in that. And basically, let me go ahead and start off by saying, folks, we're not attorneys, we're realtors, okay? So the legality of this, questions around the legality of it, questions around whether they can or can't do it or not, I would really strongly suggest that you go out and talk to attorneys, a reputable real estate attorney. If you have any questions about them, we're more than happy to provide you with any information that we can and all information that we can. Shoot us an email, drop us a text, give us a call, or click on the Zoom link below to set up a Calendly link and we can chit chat for about 40 or 45 minutes about it. But again, folks, we're not attorneys, so we're not here to comment on whether or not it was legal to do this, whether it's right or whether it's wrong. We're going to kind of give our insight from ourselves, the settlement attorneys and real estate attorneys that we work with, and folks that have been impacted by it from the standpoint of buyers, sellers, and members of condo associations and condo boards. Basically, it comes down to basically 3 categories. The first one is called Milestone Structural Inspections, okay? And for those of you that have been down in Florida, especially in South Florida, in Miami-Dade, okay, this is nothing new to you. Any condo that's 40 years old or older gets an inspection done every 10 years, okay? So this is really anything new and anything significant. What it's really doing is it's backing it up a little bit so they see if they can catch things before they become significant or before they become a problem, okay? And again, and folks, this isn't just South Florida. This is all over the state of Florida. All 67 counties have to start doing this. So, and they didn't just go ahead and start it all at once. And we'll get into kind of the timeline and everything else in just a few minutes. But essentially, it comes down to that one piece, which is the milestone structural inspections. And then the next piece of it is the structural integrity reserve study. And basically, that's kind of taking a look at the reserves that are required to ensure that the inspection itself and then any aspects or any outcomes from the inspections are covered by adequate reserves to make sure that these repairs can be made, these fixes can be made, and that there's money available to go ahead and fund these inspections. And then basically, as a result of it, they develop more rigorous reserve requirements. So it's going to go ahead and jump right into what are the milestone structural inspections. And basically what it means is that you have a structural engineer that will come out and do an inspection, or a team of structural engineers that will come out and do an inspection of your condo. Now they're looking for anything that's structurally relevant. They're looking at whether or not, the concrete is still in good shape. Is the rebar in good shape? There's a number of things that they're looking at. But again, for those of you that, especially in Miami-Dade County, if you're familiar with this, okay, basically it's really no different than going through a 40-year inspection or a 50-year inspection. The big difference comes down to basically now it's going to start going to condos that are start at 30 years, okay? And again, if you're within 3 miles of the coast, it's going to hit condos that starting at 25 years, and it goes every 10 years after that. So it's going to give an opportunity for the inspector inspections to be done for things of concern or things of note or issues of potential concern to be identified, okay? And the other thing it's going to do is it's going to make those inspection reports available to all the owners. It makes it available through the associations to all of the owners. This is critical because in many cases, you have to go back. In some cases, we've dealt with some of the associations where you've actually had to go back and beg for copies of those inspection reports, okay? And that's not right. I mean, it's your dwelling, you're paying your fees every month, you're paying to make sure everything gets done, and you have a right to know what's going on. So from that perspective, we actually think it's a good thing. The other thing is that now the inspection reports must also be sent to potential purchasers. Okay, so if somebody's under contract to buy, now those of you that have worked with us in the past, you know that's one of the things that we ask for. Anyhow, if a condo is over 40 years old, okay, we're going to be asking for that as well as copies of board minutes to find if there's any irregularities or anything else going on, okay? But basically, it just makes that available to owners and to prospective owners. But the one thing that this does, it finally adds a little bit of teeth to it, where basically there are penalties that can be assessed for non-compliance. So if the association tells you they don't have it, or if a board member tells you they don't have it, okay, then basically now the association and now the board members can be liable or be held to for penalties for non-compliance. So now I know what everybody's thinking right now. You're thinking basically that, oh my goodness gracious, all of my payments are going to go back up. It's going to cost a whole lot of stuff. What if my association doesn't have any reserves? What's going to happen? Oh my, what's going on? Okay, folks, a lot of this should be stuff that you already know. If you don't know, you need to reach out to your condo association and to your board now to find out. Does your condo have reserves? Are they aware of this inspection? Have inspections been scheduled? Have they been completed? Can you and ask them, can I get copies of those inspection reports? Most condominium associations have been aware of this. Again, this was put in over a year ago. Well, basically May of 2022, so almost a year ago. So, and it's been on the horizon now since the Surfside collapse back in June of 2021. So this should be no surprise to any condominium associations or any condo association boards. Okay, as well as management companies, they're all made aware of it. Our management company, Campbell Property Management, has sent out numerous emails and information on it to make sure that we're aware of it. So folks, if you're not getting that, please speak up now, okay? Because at this point in time, this is something that you need to know. So basically, we talked about a structural integrity reserve study. So what is that, okay? And what it really is, what it really comes down to is that there are costs associated with doing the milestone structural inspection, okay? And what this calls for is that there's an analysis or an assessment of the reserves required or the reserves needed in order to be able to pay for the inspection and to pay for any potential changes, upgrades, modifications that will need to come as a result of that. And that there are adequate reserves available should there be any need for modifications, updates, changes, anything that needs to be done to the building itself. Okay, folks, this is a good thing. This is one of those things that's going to kind of help keep those surprise special assessments. Some folks we know, we have some friends that basically live near us and they were not aware of some of the issues that were outstanding in their ordinary 40-year inspection. And basically they ended up having to pay a portion of everybody else's assessment because basically there were a couple of areas that had been overlooked and ended up coming up for a $9,000 special assessment. So we're going to get into a little bit more about special assessments and the impact on buyers and sellers in just a minute. But let me go ahead and swing back down to the structural integrity reserve study. Okay, so basically the components that they're really looking at are basically roof, load-bearing walls, floors, foundation, fireproofing and fire protection systems, plumbing areas, and basically anything that has a deferred maintenance or replacement cost that exceeds $10,000. Okay, essentially, folks, if you've listened to our videos about condos and about reserves before, what a reserve really is, it's money set aside to cover for unanticipated cost or extraordinary costs or costs that are generated just for replacement. A great example of a reserve would be that if your roof has a useful life of 20 years and you figure it's going to cost $100,000 to replace the roof, okay, $5,000 gets set aside every year for 20 years in order to be able to cover the replacement cost of that roof. That's all a reserve is. You just need to make sure that money is set aside, okay, and that you have visibility into it. And it's called a reserve fund. Take a look at your condo financials, take a look at your budgets. If you have any questions, we're happy to help out in any way that we can, because this will impact in many respects, whether or not you can sell your condo. It may impact the fact that buyers may or may not be understanding as to what they're seeing. And again, we'll get into the reserve aspects of it in just a few minutes. The reserve study is due in 10 years in conjunction with when the inspection is going to be done, okay? The other thing is that it's coming up is that it will be a breach of an officer's or a breach of the directors of the association's fiduciary responsibilities to not handle this responsibly. To us, folks, what this really comes down to is transparency and accountability. Anybody who's dealt with associations, especially ones that are kind of run loosey-goosey, okay, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This is going to basically establish transparency, establish accountability, because the issues that could arise from this are the ones that are going to be the most significant expense and significant costs. Again, folks, this is not necessarily a bad thing. I understand for some folks it's going to cause some problems if your association hasn't set up reserves or they don't have adequate reserves going in there. And that's something we're going to talk about in just a few minutes of what can you do and what the impact of that's going to be. So basically, what are the changes related to the reserve and reserve funding requirements? Okay. Essentially, there were a couple of things. There was already legislation in place to require associations, whether your condo is an association in and of itself within a building, or your condo is part of a multi-building association, then there was already legislation underway to mandate that all condominium associations have reserves. There are a number of condos that don't have reserves for one reason or another. From our perspective, there's no good reason for the condo to not have reserves, okay? So again, this is not just restricted to South Florida. This is not meant to be punitive or pejorative in any way against South Florida because of what happened in Miami-Dade County back in June of 2021. This is something that's been working on for a long time as a result of many, many people complaining. And it's also some of the things that's going to help ultimately to help bring down some of the insurance costs, because insurers are going to see that proper maintenance is being taken, inspections are being done regularly, and they're going to have visibility into what the potential loss could be in the event that there's going to be a claim filed. But essentially, as of December 31st, 2024, the associations have to specify those reserves. They cannot commingle them, as it were, with reserves for other things. These are reserves that need to be set aside for the milestone inspections. They also need to be set aside in order to accommodate any types of issues that come up as a result of that. One of the other things that came out of it is that in some cases, depending upon the financial strength of the association, depending upon a number of things we can get into, what associations do right and wrong, we can talk about that. If you have any questions about that, we're happy to discuss that. Again, shoot us a text, send us an email, go ahead and click into a set up a calendar thing. And we can talk about some of the things that we've seen that associations do very, very well. We can talk about some of the things that we see the condo associations really, truly need to work on. And essentially what it comes down to is that as of December 31st, 2024, okay, they can no longer partially fund those reserves. Those reserves have to be fully funded in anticipation of those inspections. So what does that really mean? Okay, does that mean that all of a sudden everybody is going to get this huge monster assessment on December 31st, 2024? No. If the condominium you're living in is in year 25, you have 5 years until your inspection. If the condo's in year 35, you have 5 years until your inspection. 45 is the same thing. What they need to do is make sure they need to balance out what is needed for that inspection and what the reserve requirements are against what reserves they already have. Now, many condos that already have reserves set up, okay, will be allocating some of those reserves. That's a terrific thing. And that may mean that in some cases there may be some temporary shortfalls that may result in additional assessments, that may result in special assessments, or it may result in certain maintenance things or certain elective type actions being delayed or being eliminated. But it doesn't mean that all of a sudden everybody has to start basically dumping money into a big reserve barrel. So that we think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that folks have, is that all of a sudden on January 1st, 2025, you're going to get smacked with a big assessment. If your association is doing things the way they should be doing it, and your board is representing you the way that they should be, okay, this is something that A, you should already know about, okay, and B, they should have already communicated out what their current reserve amounts are, okay, and what the reserve targets are to be. So this is something that everybody should be aware of. what is the immediate impact on current condominium owners and potential condo owners? Okay, so basically what it means is that after January 1st, 2025, there could be assessments, it could be an increase in assessments. There could be, okay? And a lot of that's going to come down to whether or not, to what's been done prior to that. Keep in mind, this legislation has been ongoing since late 2021. It was enacted in May of 2022, and we essentially have a year and a half to kind of prepare for it. So none of this is a big surprise to anybody. Now, one of the things that to us that was very, very key in this is essentially that in some cases, in order to maintain costs or to keep the association fee, the maintenance fees low, is that some condo associations, they've been skipping a year and basically in regards to funding the reserves, okay? That's going to have to stop. Essentially, the reserves that are required for this particular activity. This is not the same reserves that are required for parking lot replacement and for building painting and for stuff like that. This is stuff that is required for the milestone structural inspections. These things cannot skip years. They're going to have to basically plan for it every year, collect the reserves for it every year, and make sure that everything is taken care of. So what does this really mean to you as a condo owner, or what does it really mean to you as somebody who's thinking about buying a condo? What it really comes down to is, and this is something that we've said in every one of our videos in regards to condos, okay, one of the things that we do as a matter of course when we're looking at condos for any of our buyers, I'll get into the seller aspect of it in just a second, but when we're looking at condos for our buyers, we request copies of the financials, okay? And that's important for a number of reasons. Whether the milestone structural inspections were coming in or not, there needs to be adequate reserves to accommodate any unanticipated or any extraneous or any just out of the ordinary or excessive repair costs. A hurricane comes through and tears the roof off of a building. The deductible cost is more than basically what you think it's going to be, more than what you plan for it to be. Or you need to pull money from your reserve account. There is a problem with the elevator. The elevator shaft needs to be fixed, or the elevator needs to be replaced. That comes out of the reserve. So folks, reserves are nothing new for condominium owners, and they're nothing new for condo buildings. What they're really doing is saying that due to the importance of getting this inspection done for everybody's safety and well-being, okay, is that they want to make sure that this is not something that's brushed to the side, or not something that's made to be made to be optional or anything like that. They want to make sure that this is done so that we don't have problems like we had the unfortunate situation back in Surfside in June of 2021. The other part of it is that we look at it, in many cases, reserves have to be there anyhow. If you're thinking about selling your condo, okay, then you need to take a look at that, because if there's going to be a special assessment done on this, many condo associations, in order to make sure that that assessment is collected, they require payment of that special assessment on or before closing, okay? And that's on you, the seller. Now, you can negotiate that with buyers to see, but if your condo bylaws require that special assessments put down, now these are not the normal monthly fees, these are special assessments. This certainly would qualify as a special assessment, okay? That basically, we've run into that a couple of times where some of our buyers have had to basically look at things very, very closely, because the seller has come back to us and said, hey, I didn't realize that I have a special assessment for $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000, and it needs to be paid before closing. So if you're a buyer, we definitely work with you in looking at that. If you're a seller, one of the first things that we ask for is for copies of your condo docs, and we do an exhaustive review of your condo docs to make sure that there are no codicils or bylaws like that. These are things that you need to be looking out for. If you are contemplating buying a condo, okay, or contemplating selling, you need to be working with experts like my team and I to make sure that all of these things are taken care of. Okay? The financial health and well-being of the association is critical to whether or not you're going to have a long, enjoyable time in your new condo, or if you're going to get out of the sale of your condo, what it is you expect to get out of it. Folks, it's like any legislation. I'm sure there's going to be additional changes and modifications to this over time before everything becomes final on January 1st, 2025. So, but again, you need to make sure that you understand what's going on. There's actually a legislative session that starts next month on March 7th here in Florida, okay? And I'm sure that there's going to be a topic of discussion from the standpoint of the fact that everybody's so up in arms about it, and there's all this stuff flying back and forth on Twitter and Instagram and all the other social media about, is this right? How can they do that? So on and so forth. So folks, again, if you're not sure, please reach out and ask your association. If your association doesn't give you any information or anything like that, go to the board, go to the management company. If push comes to shove, go to DBPR and find out the information. All condo associations, all condominiums have to file articles of incorporation. All condo associations are required by law to submit this information into the DBPR, but basically by this year, within this year. And folks, please don't let this discourage you from buying or selling. Okay, please feel free to reach out and ask questions. Shoot us an email, send us a text, DM us, whatever, set up a Calendly link. I know that this can be very, very confusing, especially if you've been in your condo for a long time, or if for when you purchased it a number of years ago, maybe you didn't get the most comprehensive or all the complete updates to the condo association. We're here to help in any way that we can. If you have any questions, we're more than happy to help out. We work with a number of very reputable real estate attorneys who also are there to help out if and when needed. So please feel free to reach out, shoot us a text, send us an email, give us a call, set up a Calendly link. So until next time,